Can I ask you now a question which I've been asked to put to you? It's about the relationship between the News of the World and the police. Are you aware of whether any sticks and carrots were provided by the newspaper to the police to turn a blind eye to anything which the newspaper was doing?
You'd have to say that the way it developed from the first time that Margaret Thatcher wanted to get elected in the 70s and tapped up Murdoch and said, "Will you back me?" and he did. And then the next time when Tony Blair flew to Sydney when it was his turn to ask Murdoch, "Will you back me?" and that he did, the Sun backs Blair and so on, and he won the election. And then it comes Cameron's turn, and he does the same, but Murdoch's getting on a bit. But for the previous 21 years, you've got the political parties, at least the Prime Minister, saying, well, we have a lot to owe, so we are going to turn a blind eye to whatever illegality they might be getting up to. So the police, in turn, are going to say, well, if that's the way of viewing the News of the World and the activities of News International from our political masters, then equally this is the way we will view it too. And so that's why we get to a point where David Cameron wants to become Prime Minister, and he ends up with Murdoch Light, James, and Rebecca Brooks. And so for the 21 years, you have a culture of illegality, of phone hacking and fiddling your expenses, if you like, that's gone on under Rebecca Brooks. And so what we have is a future Prime Minister cozying up and being, moulded by, the arch criminal, Rebecca Brooks, the criminal in chief. The association, Cameron's election is based on criminality. And that was why I was so excited when I first met Nick Davis to think, that's why I'm going to stick my surveillance van outside Rebecca Brooks's house. Because fundamentally, what a great story. If I can catch her and James and Cameron all kind of planning, scheming how they're going to try and make Cameron into the next Prime Minister, and if Rebecca Brooks ends up going to jail for the things that she did, which helped Cameron become Prime Minister, I thought, wow, this is my Watergate. I'm going to bring down the government. I didn't mean to bring down the News of the World. That was a shock that Murdoch turned around and said, I'm going to close it. But I do think I'm entirely responsible for the reopening of the investigation, which led to Glenn Mulcair's notebooks being gone through and ended up with the realisation that Millie Dowler's phone had been hacked. And here we are today.
Do you have any... You've explained what you think was a relationship between various politicians and the Murdochs. Is that something you have direct knowledge of or not?
I spent a while in the Cotswolds going around all the pubs and restaurants where they used to meet each other, hanging around outside their houses. You don't need to regulate the press. The press will eat itself. We will regulate ourselves. Not only did, I was deputy features editor, and here I am with a surveillance van outside my former features editor's house. And I've also, somewhere in there, I've called Viscount Rothermere a pimp. I did the story that Lord Rothermere and the Daily Mail, are living off of moral earnings because of the number of vice girls who advertise in the back of their publications. And, he didn't when I fronted him up about that, it was, actually, thank you very much, I hadn't noticed. Good bit of journalism. So you will point a decent journalist who's after a story at anybody, be it a celebrity, be it a press baron, be it your own boss, if there is a good enough story. And that's the job of a journalist, to keep the journal of the day and write about what happens and about those who have power over us.
Is what you said a little earlier in your answer about the police and how they might have behaved towards the News of the World, is that a matter of speculation, or is that something that you have direct knowledge of?
Well, I have that direct knowledge of it in the sense that the police made 3 requests for me to come into Scotland Yard to give evidence under caution, which means I would have been arrested first before giving evidence. And I refused 3 times, and they wrote me a letter that I could probably find somewhere saying I must come in to give evidence. And in return, I just said, no, I'm not coming in. You know where I am. I'm in Dover. Drive down, arrest me if you want to. And instead of doing that, they just wrote, Paul McMullen, no new evidence, case closed. And I kept jumping up and down about that, and that's why it was reopened, and that's why we are here today, because those policemen, Yates and the other guy, they fell on their swords because clearly there had been a cover-up, because we know, so many journalists were involved with senior police officers, and it had become quite an intimate relationship between the politicians, the police and the journalists. Too cosy, maybe. And so I think I have parked my surveillance van outside police officers' houses, and I'm a lot more comfortable with that side of things than... So I'm deeply suspicious of police officers, and I prefer to come at that question from that angle than saying, I would rarely cosy up to a police officer.